this show a little early. How's everybody doing out there? I know it's a few minutes early, but I thought that I already had this all set up anyway, which is something that I'll talk about once 9 o'clock rolls around in a few minutes. But I was sitting here anyway with the microphone and the computer set up. I have my notes over to the left. And I thought, well, let's just get in here a little early, see what's going on. Hello, Snow Fox. I think you're new. A little bit. Laura, Carol, Susan, Indy, Concha, Angela. And what are some of you saying? Indy says, I'm early for once. How's everybody do tonight? Indy, I'm doing fantastic. I'm getting a lot of work done today. Anytime it's a productive day, it's all good for me. I got Friday's episode done and did an interview outline for an interview that I'm going to be doing Sunday night after the think tank, and working on some other things. So it's been a productive day for me, and now I'm with all of you. Concha, hello a little bit. And Jasmine. So we still got a couple minutes. The weather here in Clearwater Beach has been fantastic for like a week now. It's just crazy. It's just crazy beautiful here. And so it's been nice to be inside, but it's also kind of been nice to be outside. Eileen says, I finally made one of these. Hello. Well, I know I have a question from an Eileen for tonight. Eileen, is that you spelling it the same way? E-I-L-E-E-N? I have a question from you tonight, and then from an Eileen that I'm going to be answering. So I don't know if that's you, Eileen, or it's a different Eileen. And, that is your question. All right, great. Well, I'm going to get to it, Eileen. Darlene says your hair is getting long. Yeah, it is. It just keeps growing. I'm not going to stop it. And some people have asked me, Ed, why are you growing your hair like that? And my answer is because I can. Hello, Paula and Kathy. I see some people from the think tank in here tonight. That's great to see. Great to see. Thank you all. I know we're a little early, and I'm just waiting for 9 o'clock to officially kick off this circus. But what else has been going on? I don't know. I've got a lot to talk about tonight. Got quite a few questions and some new ones. I'm always amazed that even after doing this live show, as long as I've been doing it, to still get some new original questions. I love it. There's Cherie and James. Okay, let's get this started. It's 9 o'clock officially. Thank you all for tuning in to Unfound Live for June 24th, 2020. We've been doing this live show. I think it's going to be 3 years in October of this year, and started on Tuesdays, and now we're on Wednesdays. We've been doing this for a while on Wednesdays. My assistant, Cherie, is the moderator for the group. So if you say anything that gets out of line, she will be deleting you. She's in charge of all that. She's been doing that for a while, and she does a great job, and I thank her for that. And so James, Mimi, Carol, Christine, good to see you, Christine. How are you doing? Carol says, like the long hair, it's just going to keep going. I can't stop it, Carol. Hello, Carrie. If you are new to the live show, here is what you are going to be experiencing tonight. This is kind of a potpourri type of situation. I'm going to talk about some Unfound news. I'm going to give you an update on some of Unfound's cases. Of course, we have a big one tonight regarding Esther Westenbarger. I'm going to get into a little bit of national news, some disappearances, at least a little bit. I'm going to be taking some questions that I've already gotten from some people that I'm going to be answering during the course of the show tonight, and then I will be previewing this Friday's episode, The Disappearance of Brian Cook in West Virginia. So if you're new to the program, that's pretty much the way it goes every week. A little bit of national news, a little bit of unfound news, anything that's going on behind the scenes that I can talk about, take questions from the audience, and a preview of the Friday's episode. This is a little more laid back venue or forum than the episodes are, and that is on purpose. Please do not forget, while you are watching, to like this video. Give it the old thumbs up. I talk about that every week. It's very important. So you don't have to do it right at the second, but before you are done tonight watching, when we'll probably go for an hour and a half, please do not forget to do that. I would give you instructions on how to do that, but it all depends on how you are viewing this live show. Thank you, Carol, regarding the hair. Thank you, Shauna. And I want to assure everybody of something. First of all, this is my real hair. This isn't a toupee or a wig or anything. And this is my real hair color too. I'm going to be 50 here in a little more than a month. And as you can see, very little gray. There's a little bit of gray right in there, I think. But this is my natural hair color. In fact, some people who've known me for a while have asked me, is that really your real hair color? Are you not coloring it? First of all, I would never do that. But the reason I'm doing it is because I can. There's nobody telling me that I have to dress or look a certain way. So I'm going to just do what I can. And I think that's what I want to do. And that's what freedom is about. Hello, Full Metal and Michelle and Little Bit. Where do I want to start tonight? I want to start tonight with letting you all know about Kimberly Norwood's, and Michelle, seeing your name reminded me of this. I have it on my list, but I'm going to do it right now. I just want to let all of you know that Kimberly Norwood's mother, Janice, who was my guest for her daughter's disappearance, that must have been sometime in 2018. She is in the hospital right now. I was told by my Michelle. And I don't know how bad it is or serious or anything, but she is in the hospital. When she was on the program or since, I hope you will all send some messages to her, or if you don't know her, send prayers or whatever else you believe in to help her out. Janice, I haven't talked to her in a while. And I know that her husband, Kim's father, died. Was it like about 6 months ago or maybe sometime in 2019? I know he passed away. And so it seems that she is fighting some of her own health issues now. So I just want all of you to be thinking of her. I hope she recovers quickly. We don't need any more of Unfound's guests passing away. I think you already know, most of you know that we've lost a couple guests. First one was Jessica Curtis, who committed suicide in October 2018. And then we lost Donna Jean Kapp, the sister of Dorianne Myers. She died of health issues in late October of 2019. So I hope that Janice is going to be okay. I hope she gets home soon. And if somebody could let me know when she's home, I will give her a call to catch up with her and just to check in and see how she is recovering. So, Michelle, thank you for letting me know about that. And I hope all of you will be thinking of Janice. Thank you. Thank you for letting me know, Michelle. So we have that. Of course, since this is getting toward the end of the month, why does it keep doing this? Okay. Since this is the end of the month, all of you who are on the newsletter list know that July 1st will come out I'll be writing the next newsletter. July 1st, I think, is next Wednesday, I think. So I'll be working on that. That always is quite involved because newsletters end up being about 4,000 to 4,500 words. And I tried not to forget anything that's going on with the program, anything that happened since the last newsletter came out. But since this is going to be the last Friday of June, this coming Friday, I know that another newsletter is going to be going out to all of you. If you are on the list, you'll be receiving it. If you would like to be on the list and get the newsletter, please contact me personally at unfoundpodcast@gmail.com with your address, and I will put you on the list. The newsletter is a little mixture of news, of Unfound and other places, some of my opinions on any news, any missing persons news that is going on, anything that's going on in true crime podcasting. I give you a preview of upcoming episodes, cases we're working on that are going to be coming up. That'll be eventually be episodes for the program. A little bit of everything once a month, coming out at the first of every month. And thank you for posting that again, Sheree. Unfound Podcast at gmail.com. Darlene says, I say you fly that freedom flag. Thanks for being so real. Thank you, Darlene. Don't get me wrong. My dad hates it. My dad hates my hair. And if my mother was alive, she'd hate it too. But really, I mean, seriously, I've been growing this pretty much since my mother died, what would be like a year and a half ago now. So I would say this is I think I had it cut once. But pretty much this is pretty close to it. So you can tell kind of how short my hair was late November 2018. But she would hate it. But I get to laugh about it a little bit too. So the newsletter, once again, if you'd like to be on the list, please contact me at unfoundpodcast@gmail.com. Or if we are friends on Facebook, you can contact me through Messenger, and I can make it happen that way as well. The poll for the disappearance of Gregory Howells. I have to tell you that this episode was one that certainly got people talking. I know that Sherry texted me a couple days ago, must have been Monday, and says she's gotten already personal feedback from people who have listened to it, which I think is excellent. And I'm going to be talking to Sherry probably Saturday, just to follow up with her. So she was very, very pleased on how it came out. She thought the interview was excellent. Of course, she was involved in the interview. She should know how it sounded, but she thought it was excellent. And she's told me she's gotten some feedback from it, which is great. Regarding the poll for the episode, this is one of those few times where it seems like everybody between myself, a majority of the think tank, not everybody, but a majority of the think tank people on Sunday evenings, and I'll talk about that in a moment, the think tank and the poll in the discussion group on Facebook, for once, everybody agrees that that Greg staged his disappearance, and not only that, but that he went off to start a new life. There are some people who believe he committed suicide in the think tank and in the poll, but the most popular choice was that Greg staged it so he could start a new life. The reason I think people picked that is because of what Sherry had to say about Greg during the interview. I don't think that there was anything in particular that shows that he actually did that. There's certainly no proof of that. But being that he liked to trick people, liked to lie to people, make things seem in, how do I want to put that? Things aren't as they seem. He seemed to really like doing that. I think that led a lot of people to believe that he would certainly, make it look like he got attacked and then run off and start a new life somewhere. And we also have to consider, we don't know how much money he had. We don't know if he could have been making plans behind the scenes. We know that he was gone to Vegas for 10 days or however long it was. And I think also any guy that would fake a marriage counseling session twice is capable of anything. So I think it was all that put together that leads people to believe that he ran off and started a new life. I do not believe that that is a direct reflection on Sherry or anybody in her family or anything else. I think that that's just who Greg is or was. And I could find it easy to believe that he would have done that to any woman that he was married to, not just Sherry. So that was those were the results. That was the result of the poll. That was what a majority of people in the think tank decided. And if you are a Patreon member, you read my blog, that's kind of what I decided as well. As far as the think tank, if you'd like to be a member of the think tank, all you have to do is become a member on Patreon, a supporter at the $12 a month level or above. And in the think tank, we get really in depth with the information of the disappearance from the previous Friday. We do a lot of theorizing. I bring up a lot of points for people to comment on. We talk back and forth. Nobody's right. Nobody's wrong. We're just looking for the truth. Everybody gets their say about their own opinions and thoughts and things. That's what we do in the think tank. And then I bring back those opinions to the guest for that episode. And that's why I will be talking to Sherry this weekend. If that sounds like something that you'd like, please go to patreon.com/Unfound Podcast. On top of that, you get access to the Unfound on the Ground segments when they come out. You can be a member taking part when they happen and don't have to wait weeks for those to come out. You get a lot of books. You get access to the blogs. You get a lot of things at the $12 or $20 a month level. So I hope all of you will consider that. Once again, patreon.com/Unfound Podcast. Jill says, what happened to Fallon Cooksey? I'm not sure, Jill. I don't know how to answer that. Carrie, I'm not a believer of that theory, but I'm kind of a rebel like that, Carrie. People were doubting. If we knew what happened, we could just go solve it right now. So that's why nobody's right and nobody's wrong. I would say in the think tank, though, that we do, challenge, if somebody says something, oftentimes they'll say, you need to maybe expound on that a little bit. And I'll try to question that person further to see really, what's going on up in their mind. Heather says, me either, Carrie. No one leaves in golf shoes. Okay, Heather. Kathy, Gary, I don't believe the popular theory. Yeah, we had some disagreement. There's no doubt. And Cherie was not a big believer in that as well. But I'm just telling you what the facts are. Carrie, to me, seemed to have a depression tendencies. Him leaving shoes behind set off a huge red flag to me. Michelle, I think if ever anyone walked away and staged it, I think it was Greg. Michelle, that is certainly true. I mean, of the 170 disappearances, that would have to be at the top of the list of a possibility of somebody who did stage their disappearance and ran off, for sure. Absolutely. That is certainly true. Even though we may not agree on what he did after he staged his disappearance, certainly Greg is at the top of the list. And once again, do not forget to like this video while you are watching it tonight. Please hit that like button, the thumbs up button, maybe for some of you who are watching just on a regular good old-fashioned laptop computer. Let's take a question. And if you are new to the live show, I sprinkle in the listeners or viewers' questions within. There's no set pattern of any of this. I try to kind of just go by feel. I'm using the force, stretching out with my feelings. Gina, or I still don't know. It's Gina or Gianna, Jeanna. This is a question through the Facebook discussion group. She asked me, what would I put on a billboard? It's crazy, but I've never gotten this question before. If I have, I don't remember it. But I'm pretty sure I haven't. First of all, I'm going to call you Gina. And if I'm mispronouncing it, I apologize. You first have to understand that I would never tell people not to put up a billboard if they have access to one. Okay. On the other hand, I think in using billboards, I don't know how much they really work. I don't know. This falls into the category for me like dogs. Cadaver dogs, dogs that can trace humans. It's a tool, but there's no guaranteed success. There's no guarantee of success of it. Putting out money, or people do it for free with their dogs to show up, or getting money to put up a billboard, or maybe some company offers it for free for a few months. I guess you have to do it, but I would tell anybody to keep their expectations very low. That's honesty. Now, so having said all that, what I put on it, probably what I would put on it would be things that probably would not be allowed to be put in public. And I realize usually it's a picture of the person and a phone number. For me, those things are, of course, important. But for me, I would put the exact address where the person was last seen. I would put the name of the person who last saw the man or woman. That's what I would do. Of course, if there's a car missing, then you, of course, have to put a picture of the car with the license plate number. And I think pretty much that would take up a billboard. A billboard, of course, they are large, but it's not like they're the size of a football field generally. So a billboard is big, but it's not that big. And so you really have to think about what you want to put on there. Now, the reason you probably couldn't put a suspect or a witness's name on there, because there might be some privacy issues, and this person might worry about getting picked on or harassed or whatever. But if somebody's going to ask me what should go on a billboard, that's what I'm going to say. And I might even put the pictures of the suspects, or the picture of the last person or persons who saw the missing person. I might even do that. These are things that are not usually done, probably for legal reasons. I realize why people, families want billboards to be used, but I'm also going to guess that, and I can't think of one. I'm sure there's at least one or two in the history of the world, but I just don't know how many cases have really been solved due to somebody seeing something on a billboard. Like I said, I'm going to say it's happened once or twice, but I've just seen too many people, although I can't name any unfound guests who were like this, but I've seen it, that it's so important for them to get a billboard, and they're working toward it. They put all this energy into it. And I just wonder if they realize that all of that energy and everything is worth it. Maybe they should be expending their time, their thoughts, energy, money even, in another place. So I think I answered the question, but it's with a lot of caveats. And if a guest says they're going to get a billboard for free for a while, then absolutely you do it. But if it's going to be something where they have to arrange a GoFundMe campaign or something, then I'm going to think that money probably could go in another direction. So Gina, I hope that answers your question. Little Bit says, well, at least I'm not the only one who does not think he ran away. Well, you're entitled to that, Little Bit. It's fine with me. Michelle says, I see billboards as something to let those who did something feel guilty and possibly come forward. I think theoretically, Michelle, I think it's a good idea. I just don't know. Once again, I don't know if it works. I don't know if there's been a killer who's ever come forward because he saw his picture or name or picture on a billboard, or the person he killed on a billboard. I don't know. Carrie says, see, I'm not sure I agree about billboards either. On our road trips, billboards have opened conversations for us. We have literally Googled things found on them. Well, I'm not saying that they don't attract attention. They're there. They're in people's eyes. But is that the most efficient way to get attention for a missing persons case? Because you remember, you have to think of it this way. Those billboards just sit in one place. And the same people probably are going to be seeing it day after day after day. So after a while, I think it really dilutes the purpose of the billboard, being that the same people are seeing it over and over again. What you're trying to do, what you want is everybody to see it, which means that message, that information has to be in a multitude of places, not one fixed place, but everywhere. Carrie says, highway departments use electronic signs for Amber Alerts almost always. I think that's a little bit different situation, Carrie, because that's something it's happening in the moment. In contrast to getting people's attention about a disappearance that happened 10 years ago. Hello, Carlene. Thanks for joining us tonight. Susan, billboards can keep people talking. They can. I just don't know if there's proof of that. I don't know. I haven't seen any studies regarding that. And I think that I just can't name a disappearance where a billboard has helped solving it. I'm not saying it's never happened, but it is. I think you have to look at a cost-benefit analysis for something like that. Michelle, I wanted Brandy on the billboard overlooking the club she disappeared from. Warning to those who frequent the place and let the monsters know are watching. A little bit says we don't have them here. Amber Alerts. I guess you're talking about a little bit. Yeah. Oh, electronic billboards. A little bit says not in her area, electronic billboards. Okay. So that's the answer, Gina. Probably what I would want on a billboard is not something an advertising company would want to post. But that's my answer. And like I said, if somebody can get one for free, if a company is going to be generous enough to post one, put one up for a month or 6 months or something, then of course you do it. But if it's going to require asking people for money and raising money and GoFundMe campaigns and everything, then I really start to question the efficiency of the entire thing. Shauna says, I think they should put missing people's pictures on milk cartons, beer cans, and bread bags. Yeah, I don't, it's weird, Shauna, that, I usually get milk by the gallon these days, the plastic gallon. I have to admit, I don't buy milk in the smaller, what would that be, half gallon? Do they do that anymore? Maybe I should look the next time I go to the Publix. It just doesn't occur to me that it seems to me when we think about milk cartons, we think about the cardboard kind of material cartons, the half gallons that pictures went on, started in the 1980s. I have to admit, and that's my fault, I don't even know if that happens anymore. Do they do that? I certainly don't do it on gallons because I get gallons, the plastic ones. Michelle says maybe her question was to advertise Unfound. What would you want on it then? I don't think that's what she meant, Michelle. I don't know if a billboard certainly would not help this program. This is a national, international program. Putting up a billboard somewhere in some city is not going to help the program become any more popular or publicize the cases any more than they already are. You can reach a lot of people on Facebook or Instagram much more efficiently for free than you can on a billboard. That's just where we are in the 21st century. It was 30 years ago, that would be different. And Shauna says on trucks, yes. Carrie, alas, they still make half gallons and quarts of milk. Well, I know they do, Carrie. I'm just wondering, do they still put pictures on them? I should know this. I'm so disgusted with myself. Hello, Valerie. Michelle, I get mine on the mail out coupons instead of the. Yeah, I've seen those too. Yes, I've seen missing kids, mainly children, I think, Michelle, on mail out coupons. I've certainly seen that. That's right. Instead of on the milk cartons, right? Okay. So that's the answer to that question. In Canada, we buy a bag with 3 bags in it, so don't know how you buy milk there. Shauna, I want you to know that I am very familiar how you buy milk in Canada because I've been there so many times. And you certainly do it different than we do it here in the United States. That is for sure. It wouldn't be something that you would think would be a big difference between the United States and Canada, but that is true. And it has nothing, I don't think, anything to do with the metric system and the imperial system, the English system, the American system. That's certainly true, Shauna. No pictures on them. Okay, Carrie. Let's move on to, I got a lot of other questions to answer before the night is over. So just hang in there. This is actually happening right now is I am talk about a TV show has kind of heated up again. And can't get into too much of the details. It's going to be concentrated mainly on a nonfiction program. Not when I say nonfiction, I mean like Disappeared and not some fiction show, with Law and Order or something like that. Of course, it would be very different from Disappeared and the other things that are already out there, other kinds of programs that are out there, but it's starting to heat up a little bit again. Due to what I used to do way back in the mid 2000s, I know a woman who is a friend of mine that I've kept in contact with who does a lot of filmmaking, independent filmmaking, also does TV stuff. And so we've been talking back and forth about ideas and some things that I need to put together. And I'll be working on that with some help from the assistants. My assistants, they, of course, know what has been going on. And, I've been very honest, as I have been, and I've told her that I have had some discussions with other TV producers over the last, 2 years, I guess. I've talked to at least 4 different companies over that time, and they've not, I think it's a combination of, as I've said before, when it comes to things like that, I'm not the easiest guy to work with because I have a vision. If it doesn't go right into that vision, then I'm just not interested because unlike, I think a lot of other true crime hosts out there who would just die, they would, just die to get their own TV show on Oxygen or wherever else, or ID channel or wherever, Netflix. I'm just not like that. I didn't get into this to get on TV. I got into this because this is what I wanted to do. So I don't compromise well when it comes to that, but I think that being that this person and I have known each other a long time, and I think, I understand her and she understands me, that I could be very blunt with her and she gets it. And I've told her that I want to do something that's very different from what's going on right now. And I don't want to go into the specifics right at this second, but we're going to try to make it work. I mean, I'm not the TV producer and filmmaker. She is. I will, I bring my expertise, everything that's been gathered over almost 4 years now, along with all the connections that I've made, of course, the assistants that I have, and with people within the missing persons community, the family. I have access to a lot of resources that can make a TV program work from an information standpoint. And what she has is she can make it work from a logistics standpoint, from frankly, from a marketing standpoint, from a production standpoint. And I'm hoping that can come together in a way that works. It's tough. TV stuff is way more difficult than film stuff. So, but what helps is there are more avenues now with Netflix, with Disney Plus, with Hulu, with Roku, and regular good old TV. That there are a lot more venues, but it's still very difficult. It's still very difficult. But it's happening. I'm making no promises. I have no expectations. I'm not going to ride the emotional roller coaster regarding all of this. But as with anything else, when I commit to something, then I will give it 100%, which is what I'm going to do, even though I know that who the heck knows how it's going to go. But I have a lot of faith in her. And now that she knows what I'm doing these days and is, I think she's listened to some of the episodes, and we've talked about disappearances and, strangely enough, she's had a long running interest in disappearances as well. So I think that helps. Hopefully that can all come together into something good and we can get something done, that's good, that gets picked up somewhere. So we're working on it. That's, and like I said, my assistants kind of, I've given them kind of the rundown, the behind the scenes stuff already. What is, Eileen says, please no cheesy reenactments. No, we're not doing reenactments. I can tell that she and I have already talked about that. I've given her the reasons that I don't want to do it that way. Yes, no cheesy reenactments. I told her that's so 80s and 90s. It worked at the time, but can we not do things a little bit different now with all the technology and everything? Can't we do things a different way? So, and from a cost standpoint, frankly, Eileen, when you don't have to pay any actors, the production gets cheaper. And when things are cheaper, it's easy to sell. That's just the way it is. Karika says, hello and good night, 3:30 a.m. in France. I love it, Karika. I hope I'm saying that right. Welcome to you. Thank you for tuning in at 3:30 a.m. I hope I do not disappoint you, being that you're up at 3:30 on a Thursday morning for this. Thank you so much. I deeply appreciate it. Not even I stay up that late. Eileen, but I think I would love it too, an Unfound TV show program, but it has to be done the right way. I would not want to put the Unfound label on anything that is cliche, that just looks like it's being put out there to make advertisers money and everything else. I won't go along with anything like that. I just won't. And I guess that's why I'm so hard to work with, because I think a lot of other people would sell out to do that. Sharon, sounds great. Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. So we're working on it, but that's all I can really say right at this second. She's not making any promises, and I get that. I know enough about entertainment to know that you never know if something is really going to get done until it actually happens. That's just the way it is with movies and all sorts of things with entertainment. Let's take another question, and then I'm going to talk about Esther Westenbarger. Of course, we have to talk about that. Jill asked me, what do I think builds rapport with guests? And there's another question from Eileen. You also asked about that, but I will answer that before we're done as well. This is a little bit different question, but it has to do with guests. What do I think builds rapport with guests? It's a process. I'm not going to say that every person and Emily of anybody, of course, Cherie has sent some family members to me as well as other people have. It doesn't always click. Some people I do talk to and they never pick up the phone again. And maybe that's a lack of rapport. Maybe there was something that I did or said that was off-putting to them. I've talked at least recently about how We do get stood up sometimes. We do sometimes get no calls, no shows. So sometimes that rapport just is not built, and that gives people the permission, I guess, to not talk to us again. It happens. Maybe our fault, maybe their fault. A lot of times, it's hard to say. I'd like to think it wasn't our fault, but you never know. But I think that the way I look at it is that the way I think I build rapport with guests, me personally, I can't speak for Emily or Cherie or anybody else who's ever represented Unfound and reaching out to a family. But for me, I'm probably more honest with them than anybody usually is. And I'm not afraid to politely disagree with them. And I think that's part of it. I think that too many of these families have too many yes people around them. Nothing's going anywhere, but nobody has the courage to tell these people, you know what? Maybe we need to switch things up. That's part of it. But not only that, but being able to speak from a point of view of experience, and being able to tell them, your disappearance of your son reminds me a lot of this disappearance we covered back in 2018. And here's what that family told me. You should go and listen to that, see what you think about it. This is what I've learned. Because a lot of these people, even though they may know other families who have lost loved ones, they also kind of live in a bubble a little bit. And they don't realize that, for example, it's not just they who are getting blown off by the police. A lot of families out there are getting blown off police because they think it's personal. They start to go to conspiracy land. And then I tell them, well, that's not unusual. You know what? All these other people have said the same thing. And then they realize, not that they're ecstatic about it, but then they start realizing, well, this isn't personal. That this is just something that is. And reassuring people of things like that and being able to tell them that kind of information truthfully, of course, builds rapport. Of course it does. But I'm not sure that it has anything to do with my personality or how I do things. It's just my experience. Now, on top of that, I think what also helps is that usually in those first conversations that I have with guests, we do happen upon things that they hadn't thought of. And of course, any family is going to appreciate that. Just even one thing that they didn't think of that they can go back and check or ask the detective about, or because a lot of these people haven't had any new information, no updates, nothing for months, and a lot of times years. So all that together builds rapport. And I think that they realized very early on, and I keep saying this, it's kind of, we're not here to be the shoulder to cry on. That's not what these families want, and that's not what we're here to do. And I think I established that fairly quickly when I talk to people, that I'm not really a psychologist, although sometimes I do play one. We're here to get the facts out. We're here to analyze them. We're here to dig deep into the disappearance more than anybody has ever done. And that's how you build rapport. And you just make sure that they know that we're not doing this for entertainment purposes or anything else. I think that's how you build rapport with people. I think that's how you have to build rapport with these types of people, because a lot of them are very used to not being, they're used to being ignored, making phone calls and nobody calling them back. Nothing happening, not getting any updates. Police say they're going to call back and never do. And then for us, we're different. We're just different. I think those are the ways that you build rapport with these people. I think that's my answer. And I think that I think the main point about not kissing their butts and realize, not being able to, not being afraid to tell them, you know what, you're probably wrong on that, and here's why. Not being afraid to disagree with them, but giving them a reason and what you've seen and everything certainly helps as well. That's my opinion. Jill, that's my answer to that. And they realize that, I'm just not here to get an interview and then, to move on. I keep in contact, as you know, with many of the guests who have been on the program. Carrie says, being honest with them and proving your honesty certainly helps. LaFord says, I think the no judgment of lifestyle also helps to build rapport. That's certainly true. A lot of them, especially if their family members who are missing were into illegal things, illegal activity, they had addictions, certainly that they find out that we're going to cover your missing loved one's disappearance like anybody else's. We don't care. We're going to have to talk about it, but we don't care. That certainly helps. Michelle, it really is good to get someone else's opinion. We do get locked into a theory, and stuck. Yeah. And Michelle, having said that, I think the reason that a lot of people get stuck or locked into a theory because they don't realize what goes on in all these other disappearances. They've been so concentrating on their own. They know other disappearances happen, but they don't maybe know what goes on all behind the scenes and what those families have dealt with. They only know what they're dealing with, and they think that's unique. And and they get frustrated. And so to tell them, you know what, all these other people experience the same thing. It's not personal. It's bad, but it's not personal. And actually, in a way, it kind of makes them feel better, at least a little bit. Hello, Vegas. Always good to see Vegas. Anybody with the word Vegas in there. So, Jill, that is my answer. This is something that we continue to work on. I would hope that I've gotten better at building rapport since day one. It certainly helps now that the program has a track record. It certainly helps that before people ever talk to me or Emily or Cherie or anyone else, that they can go to YouTube, for example, and watch a video like this to see what these people are about. That all helps building rapport as well. Let's talk about Esther Westenbarger. I have to say that I'm a little stunned about what has gone on in the last 10 days. If you don't know, her car was found in a retention pond not far from the last bar she was at in Kokomo, Indiana, the night that she disappeared. And it seems at this point that what happened, and once again, there's been no autopsy of her. It seems to me in reading and I've not talked to her daughter, Matilda. I've not talked to her. Unfortunately, I have a bad phone number for her now. So I'm friends with her on Facebook, but she's not gotten back to me yet. It seems that what happened that night is that she left that bar, got in her car, and got on a road that wasn't the road that was headed to where she lived. It was a road that was, I would say, parallel to it. And she got to a T intersection. So she got to a stop sign where she had to go left or right. And it seems she just completely blew the stop sign, went right across the road into the berm on the other side, into this retention pond, and the car sunk to the bottom of it. Now, of course, since her car was discovered, and the way her car was finally discovered is there was somebody fishing in that pond, I think in a boat, although this retention pond is not that big, and just happened to look down and saw her Cadillac with moss all over it. And that's what got this all started. I will have you know that I've gone back and with using Google Pro, or what's it called? The program. What is that program called? Google Earth Pro. And the reason that is helpful in contrast to regular good old Google Maps is because on what's it called? Google Earth Pro, you can go back through the years and see, like, you can get a satellite photo from 2018 or 2017 or 2014 or whoever else, and see, you can look down at that retention pond and see if you can see an outline of a car in it. Now, I'll have you know that you can do that on Google Maps with some disappearances of cars that, that were eventually found in lakes or whatever. You can go back using Google Earth Pro and see the car there before it was discovered. It's really, really weird. So, I went back and I did point out in one photo, a satellite photo, it does look like there was a rectangular shape in that retention pond, but there's no telling if it could be just an artifact on the photo. It could be an optical illusion. It's a lot of possibilities, but I did show it to my assistants, and I'm not sure they agree with me, and I agree with me, and I don't even know if I agree with me on it, but it did catch my eye. What I can tell you for sure is using Google Earth Pro and looking at that retention pond since Esther disappeared is there's no real way to see if there's a car in there or not. Okay, so even though it's not a big retention pond, it does then seem to be deep because you can see the retention pond. If you look at these pictures, different levels, very high and then lower. And at least with my eyesight and my computer and everything, I was not able to really discern her car in there. Now, what I've also done is really taken a hard look at everything that we went over. I went over with Matilda, going back to my notes that I took when I talked to her and then looking at the interview outline and everything. And hindsight is 2020. There's certainly nothing in the interviews, any facts that would have supported the idea that Esther and her car ended up in that retention pond. I don't know if there's any facts to support that. However, hindsight 2020, and this is very much like Crystal Morrison's disappearance, where I'm guessing, you could say if we would have taken, or I'll just speak for myself, if I would have taken her illness that day more seriously, I personally thought she was just making it up just to get out of work or go to get drugs. That was my fault. Obviously, I was wrong. Now, how I could have known I was wrong, I don't know. I don't know if there's enough proof to think that I should have thought otherwise. And instead of maybe just the only way I could have done that was to take just her word, which she said at the time. But if we had known that she was sick for sure, then it probably would have made sense that, maybe being that she was sick, really sick, then she wouldn't have, there wouldn't have been the theory allegation that she got together with her drug dealer and something happened. If we thought that she was really sick, then we could have X'd that out. And then we could have looked at, well, did she get picked up by somebody else? Or did she walk off in some direction because she was so sick? Because that's what happened. That's what was decided. So I look at Esther's disappearance, and it now seems, once again, hindsight 2020, is that we should have taken it more seriously, that maybe she was drinking and driving that night and drove the wrong direction and just happened to drive into a lake or something. Now, it's easy to say now. The other part about this is if you were to look at a satellite view and find that retention pond, it's one of the very few in the area. On top of that, it's one of the very few that any car could have ever gone in. She happened to just go into the right or wrong retention pond on the wrong road, wrong intersection, wrong night. All these little things added up to her going in that particular pond. She had to get on seemingly the wrong road. And then that retention pond happened to just be right there. And there's no guardrail, there's no poles, there's no warnings, nothing. And that is surely a flaw in road construction. I mean, when you put a retention pond directly across from a T intersection, it stands to reason that eventually somebody is going to blow that stop sign and end up in that retention pond. And it seems that Esther Westenbarger was that person. Now, how we could have known that back when we did the interview in 2017, I have no idea. But what I will say is maybe we should have taken her drinking that night a little bit more seriously. Now, I will also say this. I think that if I had known or suspected that she was drinking and driving that night, and if I were there and I was able to go to the bar and then see where she lived and start cruising around, I can maybe say that if I drove past that retention pond, I would say, has this retention pond ever been searched? I don't think it had. It would have, but I can see why it wasn't. It wasn't necessarily on her way home. But the reason she ended up there is because, at least we guess, that she thought she was on the right road when she wasn't. Why did she think she was on the right road? Because she was probably drinking and driving. So it's like circular reasoning. If we knew that she was drinking and driving, we could have guessed that she was in the retention pond. But being that we didn't know that she was drinking and driving, we couldn't guess she was. I don't think that's circular reasoning, but I think you understand what I'm saying. But I know searches were done since then. It is a little amazing to me, though, that retention pond, being that it was only less than a mile from her house, even though it was not on the route, but being that it was close, that nobody searched it. Now, of course, I'm on record, and I put it in the book, the Unfound book, in which her disappearance is in there, that I thought that her brother had something to do with it. It seems right at this second that I am wrong. And I know that Matilda is already on the record on her Facebook page saying that, she's apologizing to people out there who she might have offended over all these years and trying to figure out what happened to her mother. Because you should know, I don't know if it came up in the interview, but it was like a one-person operation. I mean, her other family members either wanted to go away or the brother was leading things, and he's a shady character. She was the one person who was trying to do this that, Matilda that wasn't a suspect, that couldn't be considered a suspect at all. So, once again, hindsight 2020, I don't feel bad about getting it wrong. I think that when we analyzed it at the time, given the information, that I think that we did the best that we could. What we were also going on is that the entire area had been searched in all directions and everything. Well, the retention pond was a mile from the bar, and her house where she was living was a half mile or something like that from the retention pond. Well, I guess it wasn't searched. I haven't talked to Matilda, so I don't know. Maybe she has some theories regarding all of this. I don't know right at this second. But she now has the answers that she wanted. I don't think that I could have ever guessed that, right, once again, at the time, that this would be the result. But it just seems to me that it's just a lot of things just came together, just like Crystal Morrison's. She got sick. It was a hot day. She wasn't in the best physical condition anyway, and those things just kind of added up to her collapsing in those woods. With Esther Westenbarger, probably might have had a couple too many to drink. She thinks that she's on one road. She's actually on another road. We also have to remember that she had just moved back to the area, so she might have been a little confused on the directions. And then you have a T intersection set up with a body of water on the side of it. Who does that with no guardrail or anything? Just a lot of bad things. It seemed added up. You take any one of those things away, and Esther Westenbarger probably doesn't go missing. Now, I will say this. Now, if they do an autopsy or something and it turns out maybe something else, that somebody might have put her in the car and pushed it into the water, then we're talking about something totally different. But it doesn't seem to me, given what Matilda has put on her Facebook page, that she's thinking in that direction. It's very sad. And I'm sure that it drives her nuts. And I think that she's been very public about this to know, it's driving her a little crazy that she was driving past that area all the time, and there her mother and the car were the whole time. It's just, don't know. I just, can't imagine it. Can't imagine it. Just like in Crystal Morrison's situation, when people went down to search for her, they're going up and down that road, and her body was probably just a few hundred yards off the road, but they couldn't get to it because it was on private property. It is, it's just the way disappearances are. Just the way they are. Michelle says, regarding a report I've learned, you are right. And yes, you do feel better knowing it isn't you the police are pushing away. Carrie, when a car disappears with a person, my usual go-to is car accident and not located yet. Michelle says, me too, Carrie. Carrie, I agree with you. The only thing that I would say, in this particular disappearance regarding Esther Westenbarger is that she had a very short ride home. And if you do a satellite view of that area, there was only one body of water that car could have fitted, and she went in that one. What are the odds of that? Now, once again, though, hindsight 2020, now knowing it and looking at that intersection, I guess it kind of makes sense that body of water, that retention pond, should have been searched. I think the other issue with it is that the retention pond is not that big. You look at it, and you wouldn't think that a car could be hidden in it, if you want to put it that way. Or a car could go in there and nobody would be able to tell, because it's not that long, it's not that wide. But what I've learned is it's deceivingly deep. It's like 17 feet deep. Well, no wonder. A Cadillac, your average car is only about 5 feet high. Well, no wonder it couldn't be seen if it's 17 feet deep. Even if it drops the level, even if you get down to 14 or 13 feet, that's still not getting close to the top of the car. So, and especially if there's moss and seaweed and all sorts of plants growth and everything in there. It just, I guess what I'm saying is, to look at this retention pond, you wouldn't think that a car could be in it. But that, that's what happened. I'm sure that didn't help the search efforts either. Thank you, Christine. Thank you for taking part in the Super Chat. I haven't mentioned it yet. If you'd like to contribute to the program through the Super Chat, make sure that you get recognized. Please contribute to Unfound with the Super Chat. That is the $sign with the circle around it. Carrie said it could have been a tree line, but still go to pond. Most accidents happen within a mile of your home. That's true. That's what insurance companies will tell you. Regarding car accidents, most accidents happen within a mile of your house. So, once again, hindsight 2020. There you go. Whereas it's different. I think for example, and I'm going to talk about that next. Zoe Campos, there was no hindsight 2020. There are a lot of people had an idea from day one what happened. It just took a while to prove it. Esther Westenbarger's, Crystal Morrison's, a little, a different type of disappearance. Austin Pivo, I guess it's somewhere in between. I don't think anybody is surprised, unfortunately, that he's murdered. I think we're just a little surprised on who is going to be going to trial for it. Hello, Valerie. Good to see you. So Esther Westenbarger, I hope to talk to Matilda at some time. And this will be another one, an in memoriam that I'll have to do. I don't have to do it. I want to do it. That we'll be doing. But I would certainly like to talk to Matilda first and see what else I can glean from what she's been told and, how she looks at it now and everything else. So there you go. Never could have suspected it. I did not. I have to admit, when it came to Esther Westenbarger's disappearance, putting it like in the hierarchy of, I thought of disappearances of unfounds that would get solved quickly or ones that might not get solved anytime soon. I have to admit that was one that was kind of in the middle. So I have to say I'm a little surprised that it got solved like it did. All right, let's move on to this. I hadn't talked to her in a while, but a few days ago, was it yesterday? Yesterday or Monday, I spoke to Melinda Campos, Zoe's mother. I had a great conversation with her. And she actually told me during the conversation, Ed, you're so easy to talk to. And that's probably the biggest compliment I can get from any person, any family out there. And I can't go into everything that we talked about because I think some of it should remain private. But what I can say is the way she understood it is that Carlos Rodriguez's trial was supposed to start in May. And unfortunately, because of COVID-19, everything has gotten pushed back, not just in Texas, but everywhere. And so his trial will not be starting until 2021. Hopefully early 2021, but 2021. So pushed way back. He's going to, as you can tell then, he's going to plead not guilty. And he is going to claim some sort of hallucination that drugs made him do it. So he's not saying he didn't do it. He's saying he did it, but he was under the influence. And now, how's that? I don't know. How's that going to fly? I don't know. And Melinda's not an illegal expert. I'm not a legal expert. And I'm sure Carlos's defense has something planned, but we also know that there are many murderers who plead not guilty. They go to trial and there really is no defense. They just go to trial and it plays out for like a day and then the jury just guilty and they go to jail. The person should have just pled guilty and saved everybody the time. This may be the situation this time. I just don't know. But I got to talk to her and, she did say that the DA's office, doesn't, keep her informed a lot and she understands at least part of it. They're not going to reveal their strategy or anything like that. There's still no explanation. This did come up. There's still no explanation as to how her body was missed the first time around when the police went to the house. There's still no logic or rationale to that. And I think that both Melinda and I believe that had Carlos not committed that later crime in 2018, and when he was in custody, talked about Zoe, had he not done that, this disappearance would still be unsolved. This murder would still be unsolved. Her body, we still wouldn't know where her body is, would still be suspecting Carlos, but that's all it would be, a suspicion. So the Campos family is what I would call lucky that he got in trouble again and then finally spilled the beans. At least now what's going to go on a trial, who knows? But that's currently where everything stands. So I don't anticipate any Zoe Campos updates until the trial starts, unless, maybe between now and then, Carlos will change his mind and plead guilty. I don't know. But I would not suspect any updates between now and when the trial starts in 2021. Now, you should know this, and I don't think she'll mind me saying this. Melinda actually invited me out to Lubbock for the trial. I told her I would think about it. I didn't expect that for her to bring that up. Of course, I drove all the way to Amarillo last summer. I told her I'll think about it. It just depends everything that's going on. But I told her that it was a very gracious invitation, that she would think so much of me that, she would invite me out there to be part of this, which is going to be a very difficult time for her. So I was, very humbled by that offer. So I'll think about it. That's a long way off. Who knows what's going to go on between now and then? But I'll certainly think about it. I've never been to a trial of any kind before in my almost 50 years. Maybe it's about time I do that. So I will think about it. Cherie says the previous stalker incident is not going to help his pathetic defense. Yeah. Like I said, once again, I don't want to get too much into the specifics, but I will just tell you that the belief is he's going to use the drugs made me do it defense. Paula says, I'll have to go to that trial. Valerie, COVID rampant in Texas right now. That's true. So it may not be it may not be till later in 2021. Who the heck knows at this point? I know just today here in Pinellas County, they're making everybody wear masks again if you go to any indoor businesses or anything like that, which means I may never leave my condo. But so we just don't know. Mima says that is a very gracious invitation. Mimi, I agree with you. I didn't expect it. I didn't request it. But I will certainly think about it. And of course, we've covered a few disappearances in that area. Of course, right in the city, of course, Jennifer Wilkerson, but we covered some disappearances, of course, Canadian Texas, Tom Brown, Amarillo, Monica Appleton. So, it might be time to head out there. I will just have to think about it. So I got to speak. I hadn't talked to Melinda in a year or something, maybe longer than that. But we talked like we were just two old friends, like it hadn't been any time at all. And I really enjoyed talking to her, and I feel so bad for her. Thank you, RS. So let me, what do I want to do? Let's answer another question. This is going to be a long show tonight. I'm just going to keep going until I'm done. Next question. Elena, Elena, asked this question. Where do you see podcasting heading in the next 10 years? Isn't there any sign that podcasting is helping to form a more open relationship with law enforcement? Here's what I know. I don't think Unfound is helping to form a stronger relationship with law enforcement. I'll just put it that way. My standpoint. I have nothing against police officers, but I do think that they make a lot of mistakes in disappearances. But I'm in the information business, and police officers and detectives don't tell you anything, so that's why we don't talk to them. Elena, I would say if I have to answer yes or no on that question, once again, where do you see podcasting heading in the next 10 years? And is there any sign that podcasting is helping to form a more open relationship with law enforcement? I think the answer is no. I think that there is still a perception, not just in police work, but in the, more established or mainstream media, whatever word you want to use, whether it's TV stations, or even though they have their own podcasts in newspapers, even though they have their own podcasts, I think that true crime podcasting is still seen as not very highbrow, not very serious. And I think there are reasons that those people think that. We're trying to change that on Unfound. But I think I don't know how serious that. I realize, for example, Payne Lindsay getting his own TV program. I know some other podcasts like My Favorite Murder, which I'm not a fan of, but nobody cares what I think about it. They're very popular and have many listeners and everything else. They're certainly popular. I just don't know within the law enforcement community, the people who are responsible for solving these crimes, I don't know how seriously they take it. I don't know. I know that the law enforcement officers I know take it seriously. I know Dr. Grace Kolesko, former NYPD, takes it seriously. I know some people, law enforcement officers who help me behind the scenes as confidants, take it very seriously. But I think law enforcement in general, I think that they couldn't be less bothered by it. Will that ever change? I don't know. I don't know how seriously law enforcement takes the New York Times or the LA Times or the Washington Post or CNN or Fox News. I don't know how serious they take any of these media outlets. I don't know. So I really don't think about it. That's not really why I'm here. My attitude, as I've said many times, my attitude is eventually I want to go speak to these future law enforcement officers about missing persons cases and educate them before they get into their jobs. That's where my concern is. Whether law enforcement, the current people on the job are taking the program seriously or podcasting seriously, I really don't think about it. I just don't think about it. But as far as where do I see podcasting heading in the first part of that in the next 10 years, I really don't know, Elena. I really don't know. My attitude has always been that although the podcast will always exist, my attitude has always been to branch out from that because podcasting is a niche market. It's this, and the market's like that. It's this is this. And you have to branch out into, once again, maybe a TV show, if it's the right thing to do. Going to college campuses and talking to future law enforcement officers or detectives or whoever else. Journalism majors, psychology majors, maybe that might be appropriate too. You have to branch out into these other areas, and I've been talking about that for a long time. Books and doing not just the podcast, but live shows like this. Everything helps. So I don't know where it's going in 10 years from now. I think it's going to continue to be popular. I don't see anything getting in the way of it being popular, but when it comes to true crime podcasts, it's all about impact. What kind of impact are we making? It's not about whether we're popular or not or how many listeners we have. Are we having an impact on the field that we are concentrating on? And I just can't say. Carrie, typical felony criminal trial, no guilty, loss of toss and excuse. I don't think it will do much good. Maybe give a slightly reduced sentence, but that's it. Carrie says, Paula, his attorney won't have much luck getting a reduction with the D in Lubbock. Ironically, her name is Sunshine. Yeah, we talked about Sunshine. It's a fantastic name, Paula. Melinda and I talked about Sunshine. I love that. Cherie says a female DA named Sunshine is my hero. Cherie, it may be her real name. I don't know if that's a nickname or not. It may be her real name, which would be fantastic. I love it already. Valerie, I'm considering starting my own crime cast. Get it done, Valerie. We support you. Starting, of course, with my sister's case. I think that starting with Rosemary's case would be great. Rosemary's case. Yeah, absolutely. Valerie. Carrie. And that's an episode that everybody should go check out, going way back to one of the first episodes of Unfound, Rosemary Gayheart. Right? Right, Valerie? I hate when I get called on. Shannon's case, I forgot. I'm thinking the issue is I've had two Valeries, more than two Valeries as guests. Valerie Shannon's case, of course. Valerie, I apologize. Why was I thinking getting... sorry about that. Yes, Shannon Turner's case that we covered in, I'm going to say, April of 2017. Of course, there is a biker gang angle to that episode if anybody listens to it. But Valerie, if you were to do that, of course, we would give you as much attention as we can for it. And I was thinking of Laura. I was thinking of Rosemary Gayheart, Laurie, her sister Laurie. Okay. Carrie, but will the court set sentence or will we be smart and let the jury? If I was him, I would hope to appeal to some sympathy and have a jury sentence. Just don't know, Carrie. Sunshine is her middle name, but that's why she goes by it. Okay, thank you for clearing that up. So it's not a nickname. It's not her first name. It's her middle name. Still great. Okay. So I got to talk to Melinda and Elena. I hope that answers your question. To me, it's all about impact. What impact is podcasting going to have in the next 10 years? And you know who that's up to? The podcasters themselves. That's the way I look at this. If Unfound is going to have an impact, it's up to me and my assistants to put it in a position where it can have an impact. It's up to us. It's not up to law enforcement or anybody else. It's up to us. Let's move on to this. Jonathan Estes's trial has been pushed back. As you know, I think maybe you remember that his wife, Cynthia, is going to trial for the theft of the Bobcat. That was a major topic of conversation when I interviewed Jonathan's sister, Melissa, last year. The Bobcat was eventually found and returned. And she is going to trial for the theft of that, selling it without permission. And I think that she's just going to say that she had the right to do that. Well, I read somewhere, I think Melissa posted it on her page, or it was in the Help Find Jonathan Estes page on Facebook. Trial's happening July 1st. So next Wednesday. What's today? 24th, 25th, 26th, 27th, 28th. Yeah, next Wednesday. So the day that we'll be doing the live show again. She'll be going to trial regarding the sale of that Bobcat. Whether that's going to turn up any new information in Jonathan's disappearance case, hard to say. I would not guarantee anything. I don't even know if the jury will. I'm sure the jury will not be allowed to consider it unless if for some reason it comes up legally during the trial. But I'm sure some of them will know about Jonathan's disappearance, but you know that how that is. You're not allowed to consider that when looking at her guilt or innocence regarding the sale of the Bobcat. So I just don't know. But it was pushed off back. It was supposed to happen November, December of last year. And so now here we are, midsummer of 2020, and it's supposed to happen. We'll see if it happens. It might. This is in Mississippi. Bochito. And we'll see if it happens. Maybe because of the flare in the coronavirus again, maybe the trial won't happen. But it's supposed to happen next Wednesday. I don't anticipate it being a long trial. So maybe in a couple days we'll know the answer. But it's finally going to happen. You're very welcome, Valerie. Applehead. Was I able to look into interviewing somebody and not looked? Not yet, Apple. Not yet. Sorry about that. No, just not done that yet. Lots of things on our plate. Lots of, You just don't know how many disappearances cases I have on my plate right now. You just don't know. Emily and Cherie, both of them, sent me a lot of people to talk to. And I've done a lot of conversations and going through some things. And so I've just been concentrating on those. That's why I'm going to be doing an interview for next Friday, this Sunday. And we got some things lined up for the foreseeable future. In fact, if every one of these interviews was to come through, I'm probably already covered for the rest of the summer. Probably. Thank you, Apple. Thank you for understanding. Let's move on to this. Gregory Morales, Fort Hood, disappeared August 2019, and his remains were found just recently in Killeen, Texas. And at this point, publicly, they're saying that foul play was involved. Now, this is noteworthy for a couple reasons. One, he had been missing for a while. Secondly, even though he was missing, it seems his car popped up in December of last year getting inspected. And then authorities were able to finally track it down and take possession of it. And then, like I said, Greg's remains were found in Killeen. Is that how you say it? I'm such a northerner, even though I've lived a life. I just don't know. Killeen, Texas, Killeen. And then on top of that, the reason that I think his disappearance has gotten so much attention is because of the disappearance of Vanessa Guillen, who is still missing, and a lot of rumors and everything. Thank you for saying yes to that. Okay, I got Killeen, Texas right. Thank you. Just don't know what to, I just don't know what to make of this. If, he was supposed, the way I understand it, once again, I don't know anything more than any of you do about this, but that he was within days or weeks of getting out of the military. I read that he already had a job lined up, or he had some other plans. It wasn't like he was just going to get out of the military and then go home and sit around watching TV and playing video games. He had a plan. And he disappeared in August 2019, and his car is found. The first thing that occurs to me is if somebody murdered him, let's just say, and took his car, would that person really go get it inspected? Knowing that the VIN would be run. I realize there are a lot of stupid criminals out there, but that seems to be overtly so. So I'm not sure what to make of that. And the other point is that what seems to me more likely is if Greg was murdered, and I'm not saying he was, is that somebody who had his car, who murdered him, had the car and then sold it to somebody else, and that person got it inspected. But the problem I have with that reasoning is that, let's say this person who was trying to get the car inspected, totally innocent. I mean, bought a stolen vehicle, but really had nothing to do with Greg's disappearance and his death. They've tracked this person down, obviously, and they've done that since January. Are we really then saying that in those 6 months that authorities then couldn't track down who this person bought the car from or got the car from? That's a little hard for me to believe. Maybe they did, but if they did, wouldn't it lead somewhere? It just seems like, trying to make logical sense of this doesn't work too well, which leads me to believe that there are probably a lot of things behind the scenes that we really don't know about regarding his disappearance and his death. It could be possible, what happens if we found out that Greg himself sold the car to this person? What does that mean then? It's a little hard to understand. Valerie says, military case, even harder to solve. Carrie says, yes, he was out processing. Carrie, I will say he was murdered. Sheree is agreeing. Heather, well, he didn't bury himself. Well, that's true, Heather, I guess. Michelle, person could have been deployed overseas. I guess so. He was murdered, but then I just have to start thinking about these other things. Would somebody who murdered him really have got his car inspected? I don't know what the laws are in Texas regarding car inspections. I know in Pennsylvania you have to get it done once a year. Here in Florida, you don't have to get it done at all. In Nevada, at least in Clark County, Las Vegas, you just have to get an emissions sticker. So I don't even know what the laws are in Texas regarding inspections and things like that. But then you go to the next point. Well, if they found the car and they found who was driving it, then that person should be able to lead them somewhere else. Or maybe that's the person that murdered Greg. Just don't know. I just am a little... Paula says Colleen is kind of a rough town. Carrie, Heather, Sherry, my daughter, Leanne, and I have followed this one close. Paula says inspection once a year. Valerie says, how much is the military working on this? I don't know about that, Valerie. I know that they eventually said he was a deserter. He was AWOL. He was a deserter. Just don't know. Did he go off base and ran into the wrong people? And I mean, that happens. That can happen to anybody, just not somebody in the military. But the other part of this is then that he goes missing in August 2019. And then this past, what would it be now? April or March? Vanessa Guillen went missing. But it does seem that it's under different circumstances. Is there any proof that Greg and Vanessa knew each other? We can't take that for granted. Fort Hood is a large place, a lot of soldiers there. So we can't take for granted that they knew each other. I guess it's certainly possible, but I don't know if there's any proof of that. He didn't disappear from the base. It seems that she did. I think he disappeared with his phone. It seemed like he was just going, he may have been going out to get drugs, and I'm not here to dirty his reputation. I don't know. But he was going off base or something, whereas she was on the base. And we know that she left all these things behind. She was working or doing something, went out to the parking lot and disappeared. Certainly different circumstances than Greg's. Certainly different. So at this point, I'm not inclined to believe that they're connected. I think that this may just be, and we have to remember it was from August 2019 to March or April of 2020. No signs that they knew each other. One disappeared seemingly from on the base. One disappeared off the base. One's a male, one's a female. I'm just at this point not seeing a lot of similarities. Now, if somebody can prove that they knew each other or if they were in a relationship or whatever else, then that starts to change things. Is it possible that Vanessa knew who did something to Greg and she somebody shut her up? I guess I'm open to that. There's no proof to say either way. But I think on the surface, at least the public information, I'm not inclined to believe that these are related. Now, there's probably some expert out there who's going to watch this and say, oh, yeah, probably. But I did try to do some reading, the most recent information about Greg's disappearance. I even went to Web Sleuths of all places. And I can't see anybody who's making any allegations that these two knew each other or it's related. So that's really all I have to say. I just have no answer. What kind of person kills somebody and then, gets the car inspected? Did they think it was just going to go through inspection and not raise a flag or something? Maybe. I get, like I said, there's a lot of dumb criminals out there. but it is a little hard to imagine. I don't know if a killer's ever been caught that way before. Sheree answers Valerie very, very little. She's answering how much is the military working on this? Very little. Carrie, being a mommy and working, Valerie, they should be concerned this is a guy nearly finishing. So, yeah. I don't know, Valerie. It is, you hear about this guy who was close to getting out of the military, then he disappears. I guess when he disappeared in August 2019, nobody was really thinking that he could have really deserted. I mean, he was going to be getting out in no time. It wasn't like he had 2 more years to go and was, frustrated by the whole thing. So they had to believe that something else happened besides him just walking off. Carrie says the military won't even give him his military honors or a funeral unless they can prove via autopsy he was deceased 10 months. They still have him listed as a deserter. LaFord, he could have run into the wrong people. Lots of long roads that lead to small little houses and trailers in Fort Hood and Keeleen, seriously in the backwoods. Certainly possible. I guess the big deal is LaFord, at least nothing I could find. I'm not sure what he was even doing. Why was he off the base? Was he going anywhere? I don't know. Paula, 13 homicides involving soldiers since 2016. 8 are unsolved. That's a disturbing number, Paula, but we have to remember how many people are in the military in the United States. Carrie, his wife was involved in some sketchy stuff. Can't verify if he was as well or not. Maybe she didn't like the idea of him getting out of the service and they were going to be around each other more or something. I maybe you got something there, Carrie. Vanessa Sargent knows what happened to her. I have no way to prove that or disprove that, Sherry. I've certainly read about that. Carrie, his wife was arrested for trespassing not very far from where his remains were located, just not on the day of the disappearance. Okay. Maybe hey, we know relationships. Number one driver of disappearances. Maybe she had another man and he was getting out, and so it was time to make Greg disappear. Certainly possible. It just seems to me if that was it, that they would have solved it by now. That seems pretty straightforward. Okay. So that's really all I have to say. I read all these things about Vanessa Guillen, people believing that she was somewhere in the tunnels of Fort Hood and everything else. She had complained, like as Sheree said, about a sergeant. Just don't know. And I could be convinced of a lot of different things regarding Vanessa Guillen, some that end up her being deceased and some with her not being deceased. I just don't think there's enough information to decide either way. So let me move on to a couple more questions. Heather, one of my assistants who's watching tonight, she asked me, do I think it would help if people had a tracking app to help better locate people? Maybe I should just read that question out verbatim. Heather says, do you think having a tracking app where families can track each other could curb the amount of missing persons? Well, Heather, there are certain ways to do that already. I know with like Google, I know I get a report every month from Google telling me where I was over the past month, which means, and I don't go many places, but that my phone automatically does that. I think that you can turn that off. And I think that we've even had a couple disappearances where I think we've talked about that. We talk, of course, about the phone calls and records. We talk about pings, but I know a couple of my guests have mentioned that option or whatever you want to call it, that setting on Google. But as far as an actual, tracking app, I think that it's one of those things where, because nobody ever thinks that their family member or they themselves is going to go missing, I don't know how popular it would be. This is what I always, when people, you should put together a book for families, so they know what to do when one of their family members disappear. And I said, that's a great idea. The only problem is nobody ever thinks it's going to happen to them, so they're not going to read the book. you know. So I think it would work. It certainly would absolutely work, but it wouldn't work if somebody turned off the phone and took out the battery. I think it's good for, just as a parent, but I'm not a parent. Don't those things already exist? Maybe they don't, or maybe they're optional or something. I certainly believe from a parental standpoint that would be good, but this is one of those things that criminals these days, if they are smart, know how phones work, and they can shut them off, take out the batteries, and that would disable any type of tracking app in those particular situations. But for other uses, for children, but of course, children, we were all children once. We know how sneaky we can be. Now, most of us here grew up before cell phones were a thing, but we know all the things we did to fool our parents and convincing we were one place when we were somewhere else. So kids would do it these days too. So I think it's good in theory. I think it would work under certain situations, but I think that people just think that it's never going to happen to them. So I don't know how seriously they would take it. I also think that they might think, well, I know my phone pings and it keeps all these records somewhere, and they would just think, well, that's enough. Should something happen, that would probably be enough to find me. That's just a guess. Paula says, my 26-year-old single daughter lets me follow her on Find My Friends. I check on her when she is traveling by herself. See, like I said, I thought these types of things exist, but once again, I am not an expert in that. Eileen says they do. They have teens. Yeah, teens, always trying to fool their parents. And I was a complete angel, and I even fooled my parents. Carrie, my kids and I can track each other through Google Maps, but it is only as good as long as you have a phone. You only have last location. Whitney. Hey, what's going on? Whitney is in the house. Valerie, yeah, but look how they are using phones to track the daybell. Valerie, it's great. As long as you keep your phones on. If we don't do that, then the next step is we're all going to get chipped. Things that can't be taken out so easily. I think of the James Bond movie, Casino Royale, the first one with the new guy, Daniel Craig, where he gets that little chip put under his skin. Remember that if you've seen that movie? But even if you do that, then bad people are going to know it. And then as soon as they kidnap somebody or kill somebody, they'll just go right into the body and take it out. So I just, that for every good idea, there's an idea of how to override it. So I think it works, and obviously people are using it. I just don't know. I think too many criminals would find a way around it. Eileen, let's answer this last question. I see Eileen is here. While conducting your interviews, how do you stay on task and get your questions answered without it sounding like an interrogation? That's a funny question, Eileen. Funny question. First of all, we for our interviews on Unfound, we use outlines. That's how we keep everything organized. The guests know in what order we are going to talk about things. They know a lot of the questions that I'm going to ask, even though we may go off on a tangent or so. 95% of the interview is what you might call scripted. We follow an outline. That helps. And everything that is on the outline are the things that the guest has agreed to talk about. So on Unfound, I don't force my guests to talk about anything they don't want to talk about. They don't have to say names, even though I recommend that they do. It's in the end up to them. So that's how we stay on task. That's how we keep pointed in the right direction. And you also have to remember this, being that things are pre-recorded and aren't live. If we do get off in the wrong direction or something, then I'll just pause the interview for a while and we'll talk about it and then we'll start again. And that stuff will get deleted. So sometimes, I'll just say this, sometimes interviews aren't as perfect as they sound. That's all I'm going to say about it. It just depends. So there's certainly a lot of audio magic, audio editing magic that I can infuse into the interviews afterwards to make it sound better probably than it does raw. That's not a criticism to any guest in particular. So that's how we stay on task, a combination of outlines and doing it pre-recorded where mistakes and other things can get taken out after the fact. As far as it not, how do you stay on task and how do questions get answered without sounding like an interrogation? Well, I think it goes back to all of these guests already know the questions they're going to get asked. They know the topics. They've agreed to it. I think that's what keeps it from being an interrogation. In addition, I would hope that my tone and my approach to it is a lot different than a police officer having somebody under a white hot light. I think it's different. That certainly helps as well. And in fact, you've even heard me once in a while apologize before I ask a question because I realize that the question is probably a little, kind of direct, but I always tell them, I have to ask this because this is what I do. Okay, I have to ask this because the expectation from all of you is that I must ask the question. And that's why sometimes I say, you will hear me say, I just have to do this. You don't necessarily have to answer it, but I got to ask it. And I think it's that. I think it's them understanding that I'm not interrogating them. I don't think any of my guests who've ever been on the program are suspects at all. So I'm here to help. I'm here to help them. And they understand that. And so I think that's what also keeps it from being an interrogation or sounding like an interrogation or the guest thinking that it's an interrogation. Carrie says, we have a really good outline unless it is his assistants being interviewed. I think you all did great interviews on that team episode, Carrie. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you all did fantastic. Paula, I really appreciate it when you remind guests not to use pronouns about the items that get me getting confused. You fix it. Hey, the reason I bring that up is because sometimes I get confused, Paula. Too many he's and she's and theirs and yours and theirs and his. It's just too much. So I like them to use names. This is also why I like using names because it makes it a little more better understandable. Now, once, maybe a few times we've used fake names, but it's usually either we use real names or we don't use names at all. Using names is easier, and I think it's better from a crime-solving standpoint. Valerie says I'm very direct. I can be that way because once again, everything's approved before we do the interview. These aren't cold interviews. It's not like I just call them, and we start talking, and they don't know what I'm going to ask them. They know what we're going to cover. So I feel like I can be direct because they've already approved the topics and a lot of the questions beforehand. Eileen says, I love the assistant interviews. Me too. Me too, Eileen. All right. So that's the answer to that question. You should know that before this show started tonight, I recorded the first Unfound Now episode. It is the video is done compiling. I've not posted it to YouTube yet, but I will be doing that after the show is over. It's a little longer than I anticipated, but I do an analysis of the disappearance of Linda Stoltzfoos, this Amish young woman from Bird in Hand, Pennsylvania, who went missing on Sunday, who is still missing today. I do a little opening, and then I go to a map, diagramming some of the things that I'm looking at, some of the things that the way we talk about these disappearances between myself and my assistants behind the scenes when these disappearances get national attention. And then from there, I compare her disappearance to some of Unfound's disappearances. And what you can learn, Linda's is what I would call a destination disappearance, meaning the person was going from a known location A to a known location B and disappears somewhere in between. And of course, as you would suspect, we've covered quite a few of those types. And those types of disappearances can lend themselves to a lot of different interpretations. And that's kind of the point I make, that really when it comes down to destination disappearances, you really need to know a lot more about the missing person, what was going through their head, why they were doing what they were doing. For example, in Linda's case, did she always go to this church function on that Sunday? And was she always walking home at that time? Did she walk the roads? Is there like a back way cross country that she could go from this place back to her house? There's a lot of things that I'm not sure we know, but they certainly would be important to understand and trying to analyze this disappearance and better understand it. But destination disappearances have the most possibilities. It could be the person ran off, could be the person had an accident, could be the person got abducted, could be the person committed suicide somewhere. All sorts of possibilities, in contrast to another very popular type of disappearance where the guy wakes up in the morning and his wife's gone, in her car and her purse and her phone and her clothes are all there. And the guy says, I have no idea what happened to her. And those kinds of disappearances, the possibilities are a lot fewer. In a destination disappearance, when somebody is traveling from one place to another, where it's car or plane or walking or subway or anything else, the possibilities are endless. And the way you narrow those is by finding as much as you can about the person and their patterns. So you can hear all about that in the first Unfound Now episode that will be posted before the night is over. Once again, Linda Stoltzfoos, Bird in Hand, Pennsylvania. She disappeared a few days ago. And I will start doing this on any disappearances that make national news. Linda's did. I think it made national news because she's Amish. I think one of the reasons. And it's such a short walk from where she was to where she was going. That certainly added to it. So I thought it was a good time to do the first Unfound Now episode regarding her disappearance, and I hope you enjoy it. Let's get to this Friday. This is the disappearance of Brian David Cook. There's another Brian Cook who is missing, but he's a different person. Brian David Cook. He disappeared on July 26th, 2011 from the Wharton/Van/Lincoln area of West Virginia. Those are either Wyoming County, or Boone County. And you will hear during the interview with his ex-wife, Christine, she is not a suspect, of why there is some uncertainty as to the location. You're going to hear about that all in the interview. The name of this episode is Tip of the Tentacle. And I'm not going to get into it now, but I explain it as I always do at the beginning of every episode. One of the reasons I can say now is because it's very possible that Brian's disappearance is just the tip of maybe a larger criminal conspiracy, crime spree, you might call it, that was going on in that area of West Virginia during the summer of 2011, where Brian disappeared. Rachel Toller in the same area was murdered, and her dismembered body was found in a cemetery right around where Brian disappeared. Chester Stewart was murdered. He was drowned in a pool in that area. Somebody connected concrete blocks to his legs and arms and drowned him in the pool of an abandoned house. And then there was a disappearance that happened just a week after Brian disappeared. And her name is Sherry Myers. She disappeared from the same little town where Brian lived at the time in Oceana, West Virginia. And being that these people all kind of had the same issues with drugs, addictions, were running around with a lot of bad people. And I'm not saying these people were necessarily bad, but there were a lot of bad people around them. I think that there's at least a reason to believe that Brian Cook's disappearance, Sherry Myers' disappearance, Chester Stewart's unsolved murder, and Rachel Toller's unsolved murder are all related. This is a disappearance that I've been working on since 2018. I've known Christine, so this is another one of those that we finally be able to put everything together, very much like some of the recent disappearances that we've done. People finally coming on the program after me talking to them for years. But this is another one of those. This is from 2018, so about 2 years, I'd say, ago is when I first talked to Christine Long, who is Brian Cook's ex-wife. They have a child together. This is another disappearance where I will be providing a video and a map, because I think it's very important to understand these little towns and everything. So you can look for that on this YouTube channel, the video, and then a map posted at the usual locations: Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So once again, this is the disappearance of Brian Cook. I should just go over maybe the facts very shortly. He had gotten some money from his father's death, about $15,000, and he was going to buy a truck off his stepmother, his deceased father's wife. He was taken up there by a guy whose name was Maurice McKenzie to buy the truck, but the stepmother would not sell it to Brian because she said he was drunk or high or something, and she was afraid he was going to drive the truck and wreck it, and she'd get in trouble. So she refused to sell it to him. And Maurice says that he then drove Brian away from there, and he dropped him off in the very, very town that barely exists, Lynco, Lynco, West Virginia, at the post office there. And Maurice says that is the last time he ever saw Brian. There is no reason to believe that that story is not true of what Maurice did. And that is the main concentration of the interview. And even though I've been talking to Christine for about 2 years, a lot of the information that we talk about are things that just came up within the past year and a half, even though this disappearance is almost 9 years old. So once again, the disappearance of Brian David Cook, from West Virginia, Wharton Van / Lynco, West Virginia, on July 26th, 2011. It's an episode I'm calling Tip of the Tentacle, and the guest is his ex-wife, Christine Long, who's been working long and hard on this the whole time. So I think that's it. Valerie says, sorry if this has been asked before. It has been asked before, Valerie, and I'm not sure I want to get into it right now. It's a long explanation, but about why I started this. But I promise to answer that sometime in the future. But that's all I got for tonight. Another long show, almost 2 hours. Crazy. Talked about the newsletter coming out. Talked about the TV show work that's being done. Who knows if it'll happen. Talked about the Gregory Howells poll. Talked about Esther Westenbarger, Zoe Campos, Jonathan Estes' trial, or not his trial, but the trial regarding the Bobcat. Talked about the remains being found of Gregory Weddle Morales, a soldier from Fort Hood, and whether it could be connected to Vanessa Guillen's disappearance. Talked about Unfound Now, where that'll be coming out. The disappearance of Linda Stoltzfoos from Bird in Hand, Pennsylvania, a few days ago. And then I also took a lot of spectacular new questions tonight, original questions, and then followed it up with this Friday's episode, the disappearance of Brian Cook from West Virginia. All right, there you go. Good night. Good night, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoy it. These Unfound Lives just keep getting longer, but as long as I have content, I'm going to keep talking. Good night.